Greetings. The title of this video is Be Careful What Someone Says to You About Others and About Situations. And I do pray that this video may help you, because it's helped me actually a lot just processing this, and the Lord give me a bit of wisdom and insight, because otherwise I'd keep making the same mistakes over and over again. It's very important that when you have someone say something to you about another person, you should take away a grain of salt. It took me ages to figure out what that means, the grain of salt thing means. But you should be very cautious of what someone says to you about someone else and about a situation, because a lot of times people will either straight away lie about a situation or they distort it. So they might say information that is correct, but they would either take it out of proportion, it means that the situation is nowhere near as bad as they're making out to be, or isn't the situation to begin with. Or they downplay the effect that they're having on the situation, because you have some people, they would have more of a victim mindset where they believe that everything else is the cause of something and not themselves, even though with all these situations that they're saying about, the common denominator is themselves. So, just something to think on board. Whenever someone says to you, unless you can verify what they're telling you is true or not, it's best to get as much information as you can, ask more questions and see if what they're saying is, because there's always like two sides to a story, because there's two different perceptions, and you only get one side perception of something, and therefore your only information you're getting is from one source, which is and if it's not a very reliable source, so say if the source has consistency to distort things, or the source you're getting it from has consistency of lying, it's not really a reliable source, especially if the source is very emotional, not a reliable source. So just take it with a grain of salt and just be very wise, especially, I'll give an example. Say if someone says something about a family dynamic, say about someone says about the parents or the interaction with the siblings and things, I would advise to exercise extreme caution unless you can verify it yourself, because what usually happens is you have some people, they form attachments to people because of their dysfunction of their dynamics, or perceived dysfunction of the family dynamics, in order for that person to become clingy to them. So they will say things about their family members, and a lot of it, majority of the time, is distorted, because it has to do with perceptions. So that's something that you have to be very careful when someone says to you about someone else, because you have that a lot with people. Again, it's probably one of the reasons why in a previous video I did Why Before to Be Alone. Because it's very commonplace where people will say something about someone and it turns out it's very distorted, or the perception isn't 100% accurate, because when someone says something to you, the only information that you have about that situation is coming from that person's source. Now, if there's a conflicting source of what that person's saying, and this is something I personally myself struggle with, because I rely heavily on what someone tells me. So if I have one person tell me this and another person tell me this, I now have two conflicting sources. So it's basically then just seen then from observation then, or hopefully, but you weren't there in that moment of time, and therefore you're relying very heavily on that person being truthful to you. But many things happen, people either distort things or they remember things differently. They filter out any things that they might have contributed towards the dysfunction or the situation, or to the situation. So yeah, always take what people say, always be cautious what people say to you, because their heart is something that it's very hard to judge, or what the motivation is towards things. But I would always, and I say this very close to loved ones, and even to myself as well, what someone says to you, be very cautious, especially about someone else. And if they have a consistent pattern of saying stuff about other people, unless you can verify that what they're saying is true, it's best not to take it as truth. It can be understanding, but not to take it as yourself as true unless you yourself can verify it's true. The worst thing you do is to get caught up in a dynamic where you believe someone that it all ends up being a lie, and then you get dragged into that situation, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. If they are hell bent on self-deflecting and destroying themselves, there's no reason for you to also drag yourself down with them. And that's what many happens at many friendships and connections. You have one person say something about another person and it's not 100% and then there's consequences to it, and that person then gets dragged into those consequences. So you have responsibility to look after yourself, your emotional, spiritual and physical health. So yeah, it also asks yourself the source that you're getting it from, the person that you're with. Have they been consistently in the past telling you the truth? But if there's moments where they're lying or distort things, then especially when they talk about someone else. I know there's a huge red flag when someone always talks about someone else in a negative light. It's because the common denominator is that person. Because if the person talks about, say, negatively about 12 people, the common denominator is the source, which is the person itself. So that's something that you should take on board whenever someone talks a lot about other people and about situations, because the common de facto in the situations and the other people is themselves. That's the common denominator. So then you ask yourself, what could the possible source itself be the cause of the situations and things? And in a lot of cases, yes. Or it could be had a heavily influence on the situation, or it could be the fact there was no situation to begin with and things were just blown out of proportion, which when it comes to humans tend to be to react to things, and I know this personally myself, that tends to be the majority of the time, that people just react, they have different perceptions, they perceive things that are not completely accurate to reality, or then their memory becomes very distorted, and then they come across, they have a different distortion of events that doesn't line up with the reality of what actually occurred. So yeah, I do hope this video was a help to you, and I do pray that you'll be very careful of what someone says to you about other people that are not in your presence, and about the situations that they may have going on, that you exercise extreme caution about how you listen, about what you say back, and thanks for watching this video.